Just say what you mean what you say.
She's an icon, she's a legend, and she is the moment.
Welcome to Larisha Speaks. I have another interesting episode for you guys. I want to say thank you for all your viewership from my past episodes and everything I'm doing. I have two more, this one and another episode, and I'm trying to wrap it up, get more people. So if you know anybody, you go to my website, larishaspeaks.com, and fill out the information, and then I will contact you in regards to a story. Now, with every story that comes to me, I don't do every story. So I want to make it known that I try to take on what I can. And this story I have for you is a very, very interesting case. It's another case out of Camden, New Jersey. You know, I love my Jersey cases. But this one is very, very, it literally amplifies when we talk about the criminal justice system, and I talk about how it's corrupt and how it's the people and how it's the devil in the details. This case is one of those cases where you can clearly see how there are issues in the case, and people should have never been charged or even associated with it, or the fact that these people are even trusted is an issue. Now, the case that I'm going to be bringing to you today is in regards to a Manfred Younger. Manfred Younger goes by the name of Baby J. He is a junior and his father is a senior, so he was given the name Baby J. And this is another case where I'm going to be very sensitive on how I describe this case, is because an innocent person lost their life in this case. So I don't want it to be like, oh, I'm just not understanding the importance of cases like these and not looking at them for what they is. Somebody lost their life. So it's not, I'm not lost on that at all, but it's very, very important that the actual person who took her life is still out there. And that's what happened when we have these wrongful conviction cases. And that's what I think people don't realize. So if you have a person who is wrongfully convicted for a crime they didn't commit and they are innocent, the person who did it is still out there. So we're going to talk, and this case is also different levels. We're dealing with a lot of different things. We're dealing with the victim in this case. We're dealing with the individual, Manfred Younger, who contacted me in regards to having his case on my podcast. Now, his case is actually on a highly known and respected podcast, and the person, Jason Flom, does these amazing podcasts about wrongful convicted, and I'm just a little pea in the pod. But his case is well documented in how he's been fighting for justice for years. So the fact that he is still not getting the justice that he deserves or not being heard is very hurtful, and I'm trying to do everything in my power to bring attention to that. But his case is so many different layers and so many different levels. Number one, this is a person who has a criminal record. So I don't want people to look at it and see, oh, just because you have a criminal record and you are guilty of some things doesn't mean you're guilty of everything you're charged with. This growing up in Camden, New Jersey, he said he grew up rough. You had to have a weapon in order to protect yourself, just because of the environment you was in. So the charge that he was incarcerated on, and he received a 60-month term, which is 5 years federal time, was for possession of a weapon. He wasn't out there robbing nobody. He wasn't out doing nothing else. He was in possession of a weapon when he went to a store, and the cops swooped down on everybody. You know, you have high crime areas. Anybody just gets stopped and searched. He had a weapon. He went to prison for that weapon. Now, before that happened, there was an incident outside of a club where two individuals were shot. The two individuals were walking out of the club, a popular club in Camden. They were walking out of the club. Two individuals were shot by two assailants. They came up walking up on them, shot them, and they ran away. And the female, who was an innocent bystander, she was just walking with somebody who I don't know if this person was or was not the target of the situation. She was unalived. And she was very, very young. She was very, very young. And the other individual, I believe he was shot 5 to 10 times, but he survived it. So he was able to survive the incident. And I don't think he helped the police with it, but he survived the incident that happened. So this story, again, I'm trying to get all the details because it's a very, very complex case and there are many, many details. So when this happened, the police, I don't know if you are from a community where crime and violence happen. The police 9 times out of 10 have confidential informants, or they have people that they go to with questions on who, what, when, where, and why, because they are the ones not in the street, but they may have somebody dealing with things in the street. But the level of what they actually know and what the informants actually, the credibility of the informants is something we really don't look at. Now, when you look at a show like The Wire, you see Bubs. Bubs was an informant who was credible, but the cops always seem to be a day late and $1 short. So when you have confidential informants, sometimes they do serve a service to the police by giving them the information. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're in it for self-servicing purposes to get themselves out of situations and know nothing about it, but they don't care because it's every man for themselves and they want to get themselves out of the situation. So in this incident, while he was in prison on this 5-year, 60-month term, you have this thing called jailhouse attorneys. Well, you have people who are incarcerated in prison. They'll look at your file, they'll look at your folder, they'll look at your cases or whatever, and they will offer you assistance because they know the system in and out, paperwork, things like that, legal terminology. Not a lot of people know about it. Jailhouse attorneys, that's what they call them, jailhouse attorneys. They are respected to a point because they help people. My cousin personally was in the state of New Jersey in prison on a 60-year prison term. A jailhouse attorney, an inmate who was incarcerated in prison with him, helped him file his paperwork. He got out. He was violated by the state of New Jersey. Over sentence, they just flundered his case. The jailhouse attorney helped him, and my cousin was released early because of this person. So not all of them are bad, but you have some of them who are in self-serving purposes. So the story with Manfred Younger, I'll call him Mr. Younger or Baby J, is one of the jailhouse informants went to the police and said, I have information on this case. Now, while he was serving his 60-month, 5-year federal prison on a gun charge, he was then charged with the murder that happened previously of the shooting of the 2 people. Now, okay, because the story is, I'm trying to keep it as straight as I possibly can. There was somebody who said that it was Baby J. Now, in the city of Camden, there were possibly, if you do tag names, law enforcement, you get arrested, you get a name. There were 13 individuals with the alias of Baby J. He was one of the ones who was younger than a lot of the other individuals by the name Baby J. And also the person who was shot 5 to 10 times and who survived was a big time person who was in the street and who had dealings with people and had some issues with people. So I don't know if he was necessarily a target in this. I don't want to sit here and say that if that may have not been the case, but he's an older person. Baby J at this time is 20. So if you did, Baby J wasn't really in the street like that, dealing with people. You knew of people in your neighborhood, how do you deal with stuff, but having a beef or an issue with a person who's 20 years your senior is very unlikely if you don't go in the same circles. I hope you're getting catching what I'm throwing here. So the likelihood that these 2 people would have any type of beef or any issues is not very likely because it wasn't even in the same circles. Knowing of each other, yes, I grew up with I'm from Newark. So, you know people in your area who in that life or do certain things, but that doesn't mean you know them. So the jailhouse foreman was contacting the Camden County prosecutor saying, I have information about this case. He literally said, Baby J told me that he committed the murder. That's, again, it's layers to this case. So I'm trying to get all of the layers together. So that was one thing. Now, the prosecutor's office, they had 2 officers in the Camden County prosecutors who did 25 years in Philadelphia. And the 2 individuals who did the 25 years in Philadelphia, they allegedly are very corrupt. And they would do a certain type of practice by bringing people up on charges and having an informant testify against them. And they had several cases, 4 or 5 cases, overturned because the way they would do their investigations. Again, I believe they use the fact that the criminal justice system is corrupt. The criminal justice system don't really care about Black people and Black lives. And they know that they can say, or they can get somebody to say this person did and easily get that person locked up with no evidence because you have a witness against that person now. So as a person who is in law enforcement, I can abuse the system to my disadvantage and I'll get the closings because I have an arrest. So I arrested somebody for the crime and the person didn't do it, but I got this person to say that the person did. That was a tactic that they used and been under investigation for in Philadelphia. They brought that tactic right to Camden. Now, some history on Camden for Camden, New Jersey, for people that don't know, between 1990 and 2012, I believe they had 4 to 5 mayors who were federally indicted. The state of New Jersey literally took over Camden because the police was so corrupt. The murder rate was so high in school learning about criminal justice. When you learn about city, or when you do statistics, you do it by a population of 100,000. Camden cities never had a population of 100,000. So when we talk about them having a high number of murders and they don't even have the 100,000 population, a city of North with 300,000 population, and then you have Camden with a population of maybe 80,000, and they had a high number of murders. So that's the kind of toxicity you're dealing with in Camden, to the point where the state had to take it over. The fact that 4 to 5 mayors were federally indicted. And the federal government really don't be doing public corruption like that. But they were indicted for their public corruption. So you're dealing with a cesspool of stuff. So when you have these cases, you want to close these cases. And they don't care if they get the right person. Them getting their numbers. Remember, crime pays. They're getting their numbers where they have a person saying, and the way they even do the identification. First of all, it's a science to identification. I literally took a whole class on investigation when I was getting my master's. You have to show, if you're showing pictures, you have to show 6 pictures, people who have the same features. For example, if I have a mustache, you can't show a picture of somebody who doesn't have it. Everybody has to be similar, looking alike, where you can tell them apart, but they have to have similar whatever. In the Manfred Younger case, the person was only showed a picture of him, and they were only shown a picture of him because he was arrested on the gun charge. Not because, this is literally how Camden County Police got their attention on him. Not because he had anything to do with the shooting, not because anybody saw him there, not because he had any ties or connection, literally because after the shooting, I believe the shooting happened in June or July, he was arrested for the gun charge a couple of weeks later, and you're it, literally. And the fact that that can be the reason how you get on somebody's radar. And again, the name Baby J, there are 13 people in Camden with the alias of Baby J. His Baby J is literally because he's a junior. Because his name starts with an M, last name begins with a Y. So simply because you have these things in common, now you are the prime suspect in a murder trial. So the police and their criminal ways of this self-identification in Camden, and I'm going to put the iHeart interview that was done that he actually spoke to the person online with, talking about his case and the injustice, because these detectives are known to be corrupt. Like, it's not a secret that they are corrupt, that their cases are being looked at, that 4 or 5 cases have already been overturned because of how they get these confidential informant. And this confidential informant has 10 cases where he's testifying on. Now, mind you, he in prison for murder. But he can tell you about how everybody go to prison and tell him in protective custody that they did the murder. Everybody that's locked up in the same prison with him, mysteriously, he's had a conversation with them and they told me they did it. They told me they did it. They told me they did it. And I don't know about you from the streets. They don't snitch. People don't snitch. They don't snitch, number one, and they don't snitch on themselves. So if they did do it, they wouldn't go around telling people they did it. And why would they tell you did it if you're in protective custody and I can't even be in the same vicinity with? How am I telling people that I did this crime? But that's basically the formula that he's using to try to get lesser sentence for the crimes he's committed. And it's wild to me hearing the story about how this confidential informant is able to say on 10 different cases that he has involvement and knowledge about these 10 different incidents where the prosecutor's office is housing him, getting him out of prison, paying him, his house, paying his rent, and doing all of these things because he is saying that he has knowledge about these cases that he doesn't have. Even when he contacted the police about the case and they're contacting him back and they're having phone calls and he's having meetings because the notes from those meetings about the details to the incident, he's wrong on. And the police are telling him, no, you're saying that they drove away in a car, but everybody at the scene of the incident said that they ran away. Oh, okay, they ran away. So he's getting his information, a confidential informant is getting his information from the prosecutor's office and the prosecutor's staff in regards to the details of this case because he doesn't have that information. So when he says, I have information, and they contact him, they're interviewing him, he's making up details and they're correcting him on the things that's actually happening. Why are they even entertaining this? Because he doesn't have facts about the case. The only facts that he has about the case is the facts that what the prosecutor office is feeding him. When you look at the notes from the meetings with this confidential informant in the prosecutor's office, all of his details and information is wrong. How is this individual allowed to get on stand and perjure himself at a trial? This is what I'm talking about when I talk about corruption. And Manfred Younger was on trial. They arrested 2 people. He was on trial. They arrested another person. And this person that was arrested was found not guilty at trial. The reason why Manfred Younger was found guilty was because he had 2 confidential informants in prison testify and say that it was Manfred Younger, Baby J. They didn't testify in regards to I don't know if they testify in regards to the other person. I don't think they testified at his trial. They just testified at Manfred Younger, and that was the only thing that convicted him. The police took the cousin of the victim to see Manfred Younger. Manfred Younger was he was in prison for 60 months on this gun charge. They took her to court. He was handcuffed for a hearing. Is that him? And she identified him in court as the person who unalived her family member. Later, I believe she went to court and she testified that it wasn't him, that she was coerced by the prosecutor's office to say that it was him, that it wasn't him. But I'm not sure if that testimony went, but that's the statement she gave. She said she didn't see the person. At the time of the incident, she said she didn't see the person. Later, when they went to court and they said, we have a person who murdered your family member. Then she went to court and they said, okay, this is the person who we arrested for murder. Oh, it was him. Then when she gave a statement, she was like, well, no, they told me to say it was him. And she said that at the time she didn't see who it was. That testimony was stricken from the record. So this young man is in prison and he was given 60 years in prison for a murder that he didn't commit because a confidential informant wanted to get more time off of his record and said, he told me he did it. That's how I know. He told me he did it. These are the details. The details are wrong. I contact the prosecutor office. They give me the right details and I fill it in for them. And then they use me at court to say he did it. That's what happened in this case. And that to me is mind-boggling and crazy. And the fact that Black people are subjected to this kind of abuse by this system, and they say, oh, well, you have a quarter of your peers. The things that was done on this case and how they were allowed to even happen, how the confidential informant was even allowed to testify based off of their credibility alone, and the fact that you have a high crime rate like Camden, and you want to solve the murders, you want to get to the justice, but this is the second person I have from Camden who's being incarcerated for crimes they didn't commit. That's not stopping the crime rate. You're getting the wrong people. You're not holding the right people accountable. You're just holding, if you Black and you live in Camden, okay, we're a target. That's not okay. So we're dealing with the police. The fact that this prosecutor investigator has this power to have anybody testify against anybody, or has the same questionable confidential informant testify against 10 different people. Like, I don't know about you, but the math ain't mathing. Like, you know about all this stuff and you tell him, and your credibility is still being looked at and not questioned. And then you can not know details and it still be okay. And then when you have these attorneys, and there was issues in regards to this case, in regards to his attorney and how his attorney, I believe his attorney not really fighting for him and not really advocating for him. I believe it's ineffective of counsel is one of the things, because a lot of issues were not raised by his attorney at the time. And that's another thing, just like in my other case before. We have these attorneys that are supposed to be fighting for us, but because we are Black Americans in the state of New Jersey, and we're just supposed to stand by and watch this happen. The fact that Manfred Younger is incarcerated on a murder charge for a murder he didn't commit, and the fact that the confidential informant was able to say that anything he wanted to say, he actually knowingly perjured himself on the stand at the trial and was able to not even be questioned by his attorney, to the point where, what are we doing here? It's giving guerrilla court. It's giving injustice on a totally different level that we can't stand for. And a lot of times that I'm dealing with these cases, it's given so heavy because I see it so much. And when we talk about the system, this is the system. I don't want people to use the terminology that the system is broken. No, the system working exactly as it was designed. This man is sentenced to 66 years in prison for a murder he did not commit, simply because a week or two after the murder, he was swept up and was in possession of a handgun. And now he is supposedly, you have a confidential informant who wasn't even at the incident. The people who were there, the cousin, said that it wasn't him. The co-defendant who was charged, mind you, I don't even think the co-defendant who was charged, he was found not guilty, but it wasn't even the person who did it. So it wasn't like they had one and not the other. No, like the two people who did it are still free. They just picked two individuals and said these people committed this crime. And one of the persons happened to be incarcerated in prison on a federal case. And this confidential informant happened to say, he told me he did it. As a matter of fact, everybody who goes to this prison knows this confidential informant. Everybody tells him. Now, mind you, they don't tell their lawyers. Half of them are innocent. And I got a list of other people who this same confidential informant testified against, and those cases were overturned. Why is this confidential informant still being used? Because that's the system. The system doesn't matter if they get it right. They just care about having a person who they can violate. And that's the issue. So this case, Manfred Younger, we're going to do everything in our power to bring attention to what happened to him. Again, he's the subject of documentaries on iHeart. by Jason Flom, Flom, who did a powerful podcast interview with him talking about his case and how he grew up and the different details of his case and a lot of those different questions. And it just brought me like, why the fact that the prosecutor's office was able to charge him when they didn't have the evidence to charge him is the major issue. And they don't really care about having the right person. Once you arrest somebody for a crime, whether it's the person or not, your case is clear. It's clear by arrest. So your numbers is you got an arrest. Whether you get a conviction or not is that's out of your hands, because your job as a police officer is to make the arrest. In court, their job is to make the conviction. And how many people who are in prison for crimes they didn't commit? We've seen the movies about Ruben Hurricane Quarter. We've seen the movies about Just Mercy, where those people were on death row for crimes they didn't commit. Having an all-white jury convict a black person for something they didn't do, that's not something that doesn't happen. So what can we do to bring attention to this? My job and my responsibility and what I'm trying to do is trying to bring attention to these stories. Understand that lives were lost, and I care about everybody involved, the people whose lives were lost because they are not here. But the fact that we have people who are in prison that didn't do it, that means the actual murderer is still out there. So I take these cases very, very seriously. And I just, pray that Manfred Younger gets justice. He gets his case retried, and more attention is brought to, wait a minute, what is going on in Camden, New Jersey? Why are these prosecutors allowed to use this same confidential informant who has been shown to have 5 different cases of people who this confidential informant, the cases have been overturned. Why are they still using him? Why are the people who cases are not being automatically given a new trial, given new evidence? Why is attention not being brought to these cases? It's not fair and it's unacceptable. So we're going to end it on that note. Again, if you have any questions or concerns, comment below, like, share, subscribe, and I'm going to try to bring you as many cases. The next case I have is an individual who's in Etna May Correctional Facility. She was given 90 years in prison. So I'm going to be coming to you with more cases, more individuals. Reach out to me, like, subscribe, share, and thank you for following me.
I just want to thank everybody for listening, because although you might think I sit up here and diss and everything like that, I'm just a positive person trying to do a positive thing, trying to have a little bit of fun and make my mark in the world.